This week we're reading from Parshat Eikev. It is the third Parsha in Sefer Devarim. You can find the text that we're going to be reading from in your red Eitz Chaim on page 1040. The second paragraph of the Shema that we just said together actually comes from this week's Parsha in chapter 11. And while being a sort of unique formula within the Parsha, it nonetheless hits most of the themes of our Parsha, that second paragraph. And I would suggest it's probably one of the most badly understood pieces of liturgy that we routinely say. I hope that as a result of this sermon, you'll feel more connected to what it's all about, and also to the High Holiday prayers and the focus of those prayers. Sefer Devarim does a surprising job of priming the pump for High Holiday prayers. Sefer Devarim probably is in some senses the constitution of Judaism. It's where Moses shows us his own heart. He retells the history and you can hear his heart breaking at points. It's where you have the emergence of an I felt this way, I did this. He didn't talk that much about his feelings, but in this week's Parsha, you can tell that his heart was breaking at the moment that he throws the tablets down, which he retells in chapter 9. It has a bunch of key words that will come back up also in our High Holiday machzor. Some of those words are brit, covenant, ahava, love. We get the concept of mitzvah and the centrality of memory. And it's that last one that I want to talk about. By way of starting our study of Devarim and holding in mind the themes of the High Holiday Liturgy, remember where the term zikaron shows up. It's one of the three key themes that we focus on during the Musaf prayer service that Sarah's been studying throughout this summer. We do malchuyot, which certainly is in Devarim, zichronot, memories, it's in the plural, and that's because if you look at the text, it talks about this, all the times that God remembered us and changed history as a result of remembering us, and then shofarot, the blasts of the shofar, the cry, right? I want to focus on that middle one, zikaron. Sometimes we even call it Yom HaZikaron, right, for Rosh Hashanah. It's a crucial day. Why are we focused on memory there so crucially? The word memory in this week's Parsha is the leitmotif. It says to us again and again, zachor, right? Zachor al tishkach, do not forget. And we'll see it in the text that I want us to read. So take a look at chapter 8, verse 7. Like I said, you can find it on page 1040, and I'm going to read from a slightly different translation. Actually, verse 6. You shall observe the commands, the mitzvahs of Adonai, your God, going in his ways and fearing him. In some sense, that little sentence sums it all up. It has three aspects of what we're going to do also these high holidays, right? It says you should be in awe of God. Velira oto. You should have awe before him. Lalechet bidrachav. You should walk in all of his ways. We're even going to be physically walking this year, right? Walking is a central verb in Judaism. We refer to Jewish law, the sort of net takeaway of all this Torah, the Jewish way of being in the world, custom, as halacha, walking, the way that we walk, right? And this year, quite literally with the virus here, instead of sitting, we just will be walking. Imagine, by the way, back to temple times, this isn't unprecedented. What did you do when you went up to the temple? Did you sit down somewhere? After all that hiking up a mountain, in the heat, etc., you got to the temple, and you were basically in a really long line, and you went through, and you made your sacrifice and came out. About how long do you expect that took? We had to make the sacrifice. Certainly, actually, just the process there took at least 5 minutes. You were probably not inside of the temple that much longer than an hour, enough to get the meat braised, and then if you took your sacrifice to your family to eat it in the temple precincts, then you took it away with you, but it was about an hour, and mostly you were walking. No chairs at all, ever described. No sitting. That's a very Protestant model for how we do things, right? Notice that we also stand to pray, just as people did in the temple, or you walk through the temple courtyards. And then finally, shamor, observe the day, right? Shamor is very different from going to service. It means protect it. Keep its clear outlines clear. Mark it. Notice that the mitzvah that God is giving you is something that needs to be protected and guarded, kept safe. It goes far deeper. It's something that happens within us. And then we come to the next verse, verse 7. For Adonai, your God, is bringing you to a good land, a land that flows with streams of waters, where springs emerge from underground water coming forth in valley and in mountain. A land filled with wheat, barley, grape, fig, pomegranate, a land of olive oil and date honey. A land that you will eat bread without poverty. You will lack nothing there. A land whose stones are actually iron, and from whose mountains you can mine copper. You will eat there and be satisfied. And then bless Adonai your God for the good land that he has given to you. That's the promise, right? That's sort of the focus, the grand vision, the ideal of a society, right, is one where everyone can take care of themselves from the fruit of their labor. And then there's a warning. Be careful. Hishamer lecha pen tishkach. Be careful, guard yourself, lest you should forget. Forgetting, right, as opposed to memory. These are the two major themes of this parsha. Don't just forget these things. Don't go on to not observe the mitzvot, or his ordinances, or his decrees that I command you today, lest you eat and be satisfied, and you build good houses, and you settle down in them, and your cattle, sheep, and goats increase, and you increase silver and gold for yourselves, and everything you have increases. Why does this sound so dangerous? And your heart becomes proud. And then you forget Adonai your God, who took you out of the land of Egypt from the house of slavery, the one who is leading you through this great and awesome desert. And you say in your heart, skipping down to verse 17, my strength, the might of my hand, made for me all this wealth. Rather, you should remember Adonai your God, that it's he who gives you the strength to produce that wealth, and in order to establish his covenant that he swore to your forefathers on this day. The dangerous situation is actually the situation where we become successful. The dangerous situation is not primarily the scary one in the desert where there's fiery snakes and a lack of food and water, because there you know to depend on God. It's hard to forget that you just left Egypt, right? Of course, the people were always forgetting, but nonetheless, it's harder to. When everything's going great and you live in comfortable homes and you're amassing more and more wealth, that's when you tend to forget from whose hand it all comes. The forgetting is the most crucial danger that we are going to have to weather as a people. And it happens specifically when we're apparently out of danger, far away from the desert or from Pharaoh's horses or armies. I believe that's why memory becomes so key on the high holidays. When we gather together to celebrate and to feast the new year on Rosh Hashanah, it would be very easy amidst all the bounty to forget that once we were slaves. Memory puts us within a larger context, right? If we're just looking at this year, at the beginning of the year, it was pretty good, and maybe now at this time of the year, it's a little worse or it's a little better, but it's a short-term view of things. Just what's currently within our consciousness is not going to do it. It's not going to keep us as faithful partners with God in the covenant. You need a much longer memory. In some sense, we need to develop a consciousness that is the result of being in a relationship with an ancient God. A God who's so old that it's the Creator God who brought forth life in the world and watched it grow and develop, and then watched us become also slaves to someone else who could take the benefit from us. It's not what God wanted. God wanted us to eat of the produce of our hands, but someone else was taking all the benefit from us. And God said, no, I want freedom, I want dignity, I want my image to be honored in the world, and he brought us out of Egypt. But you have to remember that. It's too easy for us as humans to only see what's directly in front of us. It's also easy when we're living our comfortable lives, to become a bit proud, right? So you're rich, you think you're something as a result of it. Who gave you that wealth? So you're talented. Have you noticed that others received more talent? Others received less talent? That could have happened. Do we tend to take our abilities for granted? Have you noticed that most of our abilities are taken from us in old age? So the real question is, who gives you these talents? Who sustains them? Are you proud of this or that thing being yours, right? Or perhaps even proud of your donation. I gave that to the shul. Wow. Well, who gave it to you? And to whom are you going to choose to return it? That's the most fundamental question that the holidays lift up for us. The holidays put it in a simple metaphor. Anachnu chomer beyad hayotzer. We are just material, just clay in the hand of a potter. Why is it so crucial to remember that? Because specifically when it comes to even important concepts like private property, there's an ugliness that quickly emerges. Imagine just how people could say the following sentence, right? Get off my property. If we come to believe that property is fundamentally ours, as if we deserved it, as if we rule it like a king, instead of remembering the purpose for which it is temporarily granted us, to dispense it for the good, for the purposes of God in the world, it gets ugly. You have to remember before whom you stand, who you serve, who gave you all this. Otherwise, we misuse it. That's why we have to be in a relationship with the Ancient of Days, the one who gives all life and all sustenance and all wealth and honor into the world. I believe that this year we have a unique opportunity to remember that by bringing us a little bit closer to the earth. We cannot meet in this building this holidays, which we discussed on Thursday night, together over the Zoom chat, and that's certainly disappointing. We'd love to be here together and to see everyone close up and to be in our sanctuary, in our temple. But it's not possible for safety and health reasons. But there's an opportunity in this too, right? If you're handed a lemon, you can always make lemonade. You might have preferred a different fruit, but if you get a lemon, you can still do something with it. I believe there's an opportunity in going out of doors. First, we'll be much more similar to the people coming up to the temple in Jerusalem on a sort of pilgrimage, just by the fact of walking, right? Secondly, by pulling us out of our comfort zone, we actually might be able to experience the themes of the holidays on a deeper level. By keeping us closer to the ground, it might help us actually be humble, a fundamental piece of the work of these days of awe. Memory is going to be crucial, right? As we walk through, as we walk out of doors together, it's not that the only thing that we'll ever remember about the high holidays is that. No, you'll have your memories of all the holidays prior. I want you to ask the question, what do those words mean? Those things we say in the Machzor, the renewed liturgy of the holidays. Why those themes? Why Zikaron, memory? And how will it guide us? In some sense, I hope that our experience this year will become a kind of clarifier of the text of the liturgy, which for too long has been opaque to most people, right? To experience its meaningfulness. And I hope the memory will also go with you as hopefully we're able to return to normal and to services as we have always had them. Now, I just want to think for a second about memory, right? Stepping back from the holidays again. Memory is a powerful thing. If you lose it, it's quite possible that you're losing even your very identity, right? We see this with the very old as memories start to go away, and it's sort of like, where's the personality that I've interacted with if there isn't the memory there? But also it's possible for whole generations or whole civilizations, if they simply forget their historical memory, they'll lose a sense of who they are, what they live for in the world, what they've fought and sacrificed for, what they've achieved, and what's worth living for as a result. So on the one hand, if you don't have memory, there are profound dangers of losing actually one's purpose and role in the world. But then there's another potential danger on the other end. If all that we have is memory, right? If we only focus on the past, we can give up our present or our future, right? There's a kind of nostalgia that is very possible for people to focus on when they're only thinking about the past, what we once had, and not be able to actually do the right thing in this moment. It's as if they're trapped by their past. We see this quite clearly with individuals. Probably all of us know someone who's trapped by their past. Maybe we've been trapped by our past. Or we see a whole generation being trapped by bad mistakes of past generations. How do you avoid such a problem of memory? I think there's a couple things we can do. First, I think it's important to always place the present and the past in light of the future. It is not the case that we can fix the past, right? We can't change events then. Those are gone, no longer accessible to us. What can we change about the past? We can change the meaning of the past by what we do in the future. For example, Pesach. Year after year, we remember our coming free out of Egypt. Egyptian slavery is never forgotten, right? The memory is crucial. But because of the being freed from Egypt, because of Yetziat Mitzrayim, we're able to tell that story with a sense of triumph, with a sense of a purpose for the future. In some sense, the suffering is more than just wanton pain and oppression by someone else, because we remember that God made us free, and our task is also to stand on the side of that freedom for all peoples. There's something crucial there. By focusing on the future, we can actually focus on what might yet be built. It's very easy to start ruminating about problems in the past, just the mind spinning on it, right? I was really hurt when. They're just so awful and I can't get it back. My reputation or my standing was damaged. Well, if it's in the past, it's true, it's gone. It's already been done. But if we look at what we might build in the future, there are possibilities to redeem that. We continue to tell the story. Now, to do it, it requires something I might even call just a positivity bias, right? Not getting focused on the negative, ruminating on bad mistakes. Instead, building the future. It's quite simple. I think you'll see it from this example. If you stay focused on the past, you might look at injustices in the past and try to rail against them, right? Down with white supremacy. It's a good agenda. But what's sort of stillborn about it? It's focused on what is wrong as opposed to what can be built. It's not a positive vision yet. It's a negating image, right? That has certain parameters, especially if it's focused on the future. We can do something with that. But when it's primarily about the past, it's already locked in. There isn't much you can do with that. There's a classic debate in Judaism based on the pasuk Sur Me'ra ve'aseh tov. The first half of the verse, Sur Me'ra, says, turn away from evil. And the second half says, and do the good. So people debate, what's actually the most effective way to transform a person? You might extend it to a society. Do you first have to stop the bad from happening? Sur Me'ra, turn away from the bad and the evil, right? And the order of the verse would seem to indicate that, yes, that comes first. And then you can do the good. But if you reflect on processes of transformation you might have seen in your own life or those of others, is it really possible to get someone to stop doing all the wrong things first? Is a child going to grow up into the mensch that you want them to be if you're always telling them all the wrong things they do? Can you ever get someone to stop doing all the wrong things? What about the other approach? Aseh tov, do the good. What if we focus primarily on adding one good thing to someone's personality, into their habits or their repertoire each day, right? Let's do that good thing. I've met some people who really inspired me who said, I just try to do a mitzvah a day. To many people, it almost doesn't matter which mitzvah, just that they do it. I would suggest that displacing the bad with the good is the much more effective approach if you look at how people work, so that they don't fall into either despair or into a negative, self-obsessed cycle of focusing on the ill. We're in an election year. We're going to have people slinging mud at values that we hold sacred, No matter where you are on the political spectrum, you're going to hear things that offend. And much of the time, we want to step up and defend, right? That sacred value, that value that we hold sacred. But I would suggest that fighting in general is not going to help much. Slinging mud is not going to help much. What are you going to do when someone slings mud on your sacred cow? Are you going to respond by slinging it back? I would suggest that way everyone just gets real muddy, but we don't actually get any clarity, just a lot of smear. When people sling mud, pitch hope back. Send something that someone can actually do something with. Don't merely cast aspersions on a good idea. It's not possible to combat darkness with more darkness. The way you triumph over the darkness is to add some light into the situation. And you can learn where things are. And the darkness doesn't have to be overwhelming. Always knowing that the dawn is coming. It's always going to come, and we can act from the place of that hope. This year, as we read Parshat Eikev, I want to bless you that you should live from a place of seeing both the past rooted in your memory and the future, how it might be transformed. I want to bless you that you should understand and be fed upon our heritage. And I want to bless you that we should redeem the meaning of the past through our dreams about the future. Shabbat Shalom.